Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential freedom through land investing, real estate investing, and entrepreneurship.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Apke. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Brian Luebben. Brian has created a ton of financial freedom. He travels the world right now through real estate. He's done a lot of this. Brian, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive in, talk about some cool concepts, talk about land flipping, real estate investing, dollars and cents, and then maybe about some of the important stuff too, because a lot of the times people don't wonder and actually take the time to think about why the hell they're doing it.
Yep. So, and what I like about your story is like you're doing what you want to do, and you're also making a ton of money. Like you're not stuck in corporate America, which I know you preach a ton of. You got out of corporate America a couple of years ago. You're traveling the world, doing what you want to do, living your best life. So I'm really happy to have you on here. But let's just go into your story, Brian. Like, where were you 5 years ago? How'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, my backstory was I was a basketball coach for this small university for a couple of years. And then I realized I wasn't making any money. So I started flipping land. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Wrong story. So no, very, very traditional start. You know, I popped out of college and I went straight into corporate America. And I was like, oh, man, I'm going to be a wheeling, dealing sales machine for the rest of my life. And I thought I was going to be that until, 60 years old. I was going to be an SVP. I was going to drive a Porsche and I was going to have a nice, $500,000-$600,000 house over by the lake or something. Like that was like my dream. And then thankfully I got everything I ever wanted, which then I realized that none of it mattered. So if anybody that's listening to this is a high performer, which I'm sure a lot of you are, what happens when you do the thing? So I got number 8 out of 5,079 reps in the country. So I have to remind myself sometimes that like I balled out. Like I was really, really effing good at what I did. And it took a lot out of you to do that. It was like 80-hour weeks, listening to sales training in the car, just going above and beyond for the customers and for the company. And you give everything. And then I hit it. And then they were like, we're going to make you sales manager, VP. Like here, you're like, we're going to shoot you to the moon, dude. And I looked at my VP and I was like, dude, I do not want your life. I was like, your life sucks, brother. I was like, all you're doing, that's like, because you shadow them, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody that's got a corporate job, like you shadow the position that you're going to take. And I did a day shadowing him and it was just conference calls in 15-minute increments. So I said, wait a second. So what I'm working towards is less freedom.
Yep.
It's like, and not candidly, not that much more pay. I was making like $250,000 a year. So I was like, you make, maybe 350 with stock options, but I'm like, you got less freedom than I do, man. So it's like, you definitely can't do what you want when you want with who you want. And so that's when I realized I was climbing the wrong mountain and I had to go way back down to the bottom and start all over again. So I started investing in real estate. Long story short, started up a podcast, my show Action Academy, which I had you on. And it was a great time. I didn't plan to make money from it, but accidentally ended up replacing that 6-figure income in March of 2022. After 3 months consecutive of replacing that income, I quit my job, March 2022. Then I hopped on a one-way flight, next best thing, travel full-time around the world for 8 months, moved to Austin, Texas. And now I'm over here planning a trip to Iceland in I think 2 weeks. I think I want to go to Iceland. So I'm going to go to Iceland and I can do that because I can run my business from there.
Nice. That's awesome. That's really cool. One thing we have a lot when our students come to us or potential students and they're talking about quitting their job, they want to do this. They talk about like a moment that like it clicked, like I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. Some people come in and they just want it to be a side job. That's fine. And they want to add some extra income. But for you, it was like, okay, this is not for me. I know it's not for me. Was there a moment that it kind of clicked for you, or was it a gradual thing where you had some nights you're like, this isn't for me? Like,
it's always both. People can say it's a moment, but it's the moment that it crosses the line because it's always on the line, always. Because it's not really our passion. I was selling uniforms, man. So it's just like not our passion. and so there's a couple of instances that happened. So I was owed an $87,000 bonus during COVID and because I made it to the top. And then they said, oh, we're not paying bonuses this year. Say, huh? And I was like, I was going to use that to buy a rental property. What do you mean? Like it's black and white in the comp plan. And they're like, no, we just fired like 10% of the staff. So it's like, we can't justify giving out big bonuses to our reps. Now, I understand it wasn't personal, but from like a company management side, that was the dumbest effing decision they could have ever made to do that to their sales force, the people that they needed out in the field. Maybe for the executives that are making millions of dollars, yeah, I'd probably do that, but not for your sales force. So that was one. And then seeing my VP shove donuts in his face and be booked 15-minute increments and flying around the Southeast, not seeing his daughters grow up was another one. And then lastly, there was just a day that I was driving in my car for hours and hours and hours all across the state of Georgia because I covered it. And I was like, there's got to be more that I'm meant to do here on this earth than this. Like, there's got to be more. Like, this doesn't feel like I'm doing that much. Like, I'm good at what I do, but come on now. Like, there's something bigger that I'm meant to do. So those were kind of the 3 moments. So an exercise that I'd recommend for people to do is look at your boss's boss. And if you like what you see, then cool, keep rocking, keep trucking. But if you don't like what you see, which you mostly probably won't like what you see, it's time to plan your escape. And you just mentioned the part-time thing. And I actually am a huge proponent of that. So I don't think most people are best suited to just leap out of their job. I think that's kind of dumb. I think the best way is it's a gradual transition. So, that year, 2019, I bought a house. 2020, I bought a house. 2021, I bought a house. It was a slow burn, but then eventually, after a certain period of time, then I was like, okay, cool. Now I can really mash the gas and ramp this thing up. And then that's when I started the more advanced strategies. That's when I started to really swing for the ball. And then that's when I connected and was able to actually replace that $20,000 a month that I needed. So I always say start with 20% of your work week on your side hustle or your real estate or your land flipping, then gradually move to 30%, then to 40%. And once you're at the 50% mark, it's about time for you to make the leap.
That's really cool. That makes a ton of sense. And that's how kind of Daniel did. Daniel was waking up early waking up early doing his drop shipping business way before land, anything like that, when he was doing a 9 to 5. My story was I was riding buses with a bunch of 6'10" college basketball players, answering land calls. Like, I remember answering calls on the phone from these land sellers, and my head coach behind me is like, "What are you doing?" I'm talking to people. Like, I'm sorry, I'm driving the bus too, driving 12 people around there. But talk about your real estate. Like, what was your little niche that you got in? You said you're buying a house a year, something like that. Were you flipping it? Were you, what were you doing with it?
Co-living. So I was just house hacking. It's very boring when you look back at it. I'll never do it again, but it was super fun while I did it. So I would just buy, it was like how sexy my life is right now was built on the foundation of the least sexy real estate investing strategy that you could possibly do. Like, I literally just conventionally bought a house, 3% down, lived in one part, rented the other rooms out once a year. I didn't even do anything creative. I didn't know about partnerships. I didn't know about capital raising. I didn't know any of this. I was just like, I make a lot of money. I'm going to save my money. And then once a year, I'm going to buy a new house. That's all I knew. And so I didn't have anybody that was like there to like mentor me or coach me or show me the way, or like I read a couple books and I was like, okay, I'll do this. And so by the time it was time to leave, those houses were printing like $4,000 net, which that's a whole other can of worms that we can get into. Is like people get so caught up in replacing a high 6-figure income, but there's like different levels. Like, there's different levels that you can replace, one by one. Like, there's 3 levels. So there's like survive, arrive, and thrive is what I call them. So if you're making $10,000 a month, that's really effing hard. I'm trying not to cuss. It's really effing hard for you to replace $10,000 a month passive income, quote unquote passive income, which we can get into that too. I think passive income is kind of, BS. So the survive is what you start with. So that's your fixed expenses. First thing we tackle. All of a sudden this becomes manageable, because if you really look at it, like, okay, how much is your rent? How much is baseline expenses? How much is food on the table? Normally $3,000 to $4,000 a month. So that all of a sudden is a much more manageable thing to tackle than $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. So we start with that, and then we get to arrive, which now you're like, okay, this is more like the $5,000 to $6,000 range. I can kind of like live and plus have some discretionary spending. And then thrive is now your entire income is replaced. And when you're doing it through real estate and through other stuff, then that's mostly tax free. So now you're not paying that 30% tax that you were paying before. So now you're just balling out. So I've been through all 3. So I started with, so that $4,000 covered my, survive bucket, and honestly, almost a little bit of the arrive bucket, because I house hacked and I lived for free.
And that's all you're worried about. Like, you weren't worried about going and making 10 times as much money in 2 years. You're worried about being able to live not on a corporate job, essentially, correct?
Correct. But I will say that I'm not the beans and rice guy. I love money.
Yeah.
Like, it's a giant game to me. And I think that people that are trying to frugal their way to freedom, that's a losing game to play. I really think so. So for me, everything changed when I changed my relationship with passive income. So I had a coach, and I was talking to my coach. I said, hey, man, first coach I ever hired. And here's a cliff note for people that are listening. It's like, I was at a mastermind event, and I was like, once I have things more figured out and I have more time, I'll hire a coach. And then Brandon Turner, bigger pockets, Hawaii guy, literally, I was telling him that, and he goes, oh, he's like, that's funny. He's like, why is it funny? And he goes, because you're not going to figure it out, and you're not going to have time until you hire the coach. It's like, got it. Now it makes sense. So hire the coach. I was like, this is my 5-year plan. I thought I was going to do it through multifamily investing. I was like, okay, $20,000 a month passive income. This is what we're going to do. He goes, cool, great idea. How about we do it in 6 months instead? It's like, what? It's like, oh, you know, what are you smoking, brother? I was like, hey, no way we're doing that. I was like, that's cute, though. That's cute that you think that. And he goes, well, he's like, are people doing it? I'm like, I'm sure somewhere. He's like, are people making like $200,000 in 6 months? I was like, yeah. He's like, are people making $2 million in 6 months? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, it's possible. Then why don't you think it's possible for you? But, oh, okay. Let's continue down this rabbit hole. And so the end result that we came to was, he said a quote that changed my life. And he was like, why does it need to be passive? I was like, oh, I never really thought about that. He's like, because you don't really strike me as the type of dude that's just going to go lay on a beach and do nothing. He's like, you're right. I got to get bored. I got to do something. It's like, yeah. So why don't we just figure out how to generate the delta here? So you're making 4,000 passive. He's like, let's figure out how to generate the other 15,000 doing something that you freaking love. I'm like, okay, cool. So that started the gears turning for me to like fire off my reticular activating system. For people that are listening that are unfamiliar, it's the part of your brain that recognizes things. So you buy a new car, a new red car, you see the new red car everywhere on the road afterwards, right? So now you guys like look at land deals. So now I'm sure you drive past vacant lots and you're like, whoa, that's hot. I want that right there. And so it's just like you see what you pay attention to. And then the podcast ended up accidentally becoming that through affiliates. And I was just like, okay, cool. I had the number in mind, and then I ended up hitting that exact number. So I guess it wasn't technically passive, but that's what led to me creating what's called passionate income. So it's like get enough passive income, you get your financial foundation set so that you can do what you love and make money from it. Because now you have your focus and your mental bandwidth freed up. So I'll stop there. That was a bunch of information.
Brian, obviously you went from working a 9-to-5 job. You said you were putting 80 hours a week of work in to hiring a coach. You were making 4,000 a month, starting to replace that. At what point did you quit your job? Like, how much were you making when you quit your job? Were you house hacking? Because I did a similar thing. When I quit, I was actually still house hacking. And that had me, I was just saving a ton of money. I was making money for my electric bike company. I had rentals, and it just quitting with such low expenses helped that barrier. Like, can you talk about that mindset shift a little bit of how you had to overcome quitting your job? Because that's a long process to be able to understand that your lifestyle currently is a possibility.
Yeah, it was. So what people don't realize is like the emotional side. So that's why like you guys have a community for land flipping. I have a community that literally helps people transition from employee to entrepreneur. And the community is what keeps you out. So I say cash flow gets you out of your job, community keeps you out. Because I didn't have panic attacks until after I left my job. So let's paint the picture right quick. Like, let's set the scene. So January, February, March. January, and these months were some of the most fun months of my life, right? Because I just closed some massive national deals for my company, and now those paychecks were coming in. So January, February, and March, on top of everything, like everything combined, my W-2, my side business, my real estate, I was making like $80,000 a month on top with everything. So it was roaring because but also my podcast is an affiliate for Go Abundance, which I'm a member of, and one of my mindset coaches. So like January, February, like people are looking to hire coaches or whatever, and they were just doing it for my podcast. And so January hits, I make like 30,000 on top of my W-2, and I made like 30,000 on my W-2 that month. And then February hit, and I was just like, oh my God, like this is working. Like this can work. And I was just pocketing all of it. So I had like $80,000 in cash saved up over the last year. I had, this income coming in that was proven for 3 months. I had my real estate. I was living for free. I had no expenses, no debt. And then, the day comes, like March 17th. And, in corporate, they dangle these, vested shares in front of you. So it's like whatever you do, there's always a 3-year vest for the stock that you earn. So I knew that I'd be giving up each quarter. I would say, okay, next quarter I'm going to quit, but then I'd crush it again because I always crush it every quarter. And then I'd have more money coming in that I was going to give up. And then eventually I ended up giving up like $70,000 of W-2 income that was like already promised to me. And I gave up like $170,000 of vested shares, of unvested shares. So that day was scary. But what happened, what made me do it, was I was in this accountability pod in one of my masterminds I was a member of. And they were saying, dude, you've been talking about this for a year and you're not doing anything about it. And we're frankly getting annoyed and pissed off at you for doing this. So they're like, how about this? How about you shut up and you don't say anything again, or you set a date to it? I was like, all right, now we're cooking. I was like, you're right. Because all that followed that prior year, I'm going to quit my job. I hate this job. I'm going to quit this job. I never put a date to it. So they were like, all right, cool. Put a date to it. And if you don't do it, you owe $10,000 to the charity of our choice. I was like, all right, March 17th just came out of nowhere. So it was a Wednesday. And so March 17th came and I went to my office. I was like, oh my God. And so I ended up leaving, man. I quit and they escorted me out to my car, escorted me out of the office. And I drove home and I thought there would be like fireworks and like a mariachi band or something, but just like millionaire status, you think there's going to be like some celebration or like a dinner with the bros at least. It's like, no, nobody cares. And so, yeah, then afterwards, I was like, okay, well, I did all this so I can go on this trip and go on the one-way flight and travel. And I was going to do Greece for the first month. God dang, man, I started having panic attacks every single week. It was rough. It feels like you're having a heart attack and you're like your body starts shutting down. It's like the scariest thing ever. And then one of the reason I was able to overcome them was, my girlfriend at the time was like walking me outside. And then one of my mentors, she called one of my mentors on my phone. His name's Mike. And he was like, hey, man, scary, isn't it? I was like, yeah, dude, it really is. He's like, yeah. He's like, all you're dealing with right now is the fear of uncertainty. That's it. That's all that you're afraid of. He's like, because if you knew that you would be successful, then you wouldn't be afraid right now. Because I'm here to tell you, you will be successful. Things will work out. It's going to be a rocky first year with you figuring things out, but it's going to be super fun. And then after a year, you're going to be on podcasts. You're going to be telling people about this. So now here we are a year and a half later, and I'm still out. I'm still not bankrupt. Everything went wrong that could possibly go wrong. Still didn't bankrupt me. I even ended up losing the relationship that I was in at the time. I thought that was like the last thing I had to worry about. But yeah, man. And now it's like I sold those houses, ironically. So I don't even have that real estate anymore. I sold the houses. And so now I've got enough cash to like literally sit and do nothing for the next 3 years if I felt like it. And now I'm just going all in on my business, all in on Action Academy. And I'm operating from a position of FU that feels fucking amazing. Like I can't even, because the cool thing about it is now I can run my business with zero fear. Because I can really swing for the plate and I can say no to people that aren't the correct fit because I have that financial security. So it's like sometimes we talk about leverage and we talk about return on equity. And then I also think about return on energy and return on effort. So that's another ROE that I account for. So like for me, just even having that cash right now just puts me in a position where I can just really play ball and it's freaking fun. So that's where I'm at today.
That's awesome.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, you talked about this. It's funny you hit on this, and you brought up poor Mosey's name before this call when we were briefly talking. You said, I think something people struggle with, they hop from business to business to business. And you just mentioned you sold your real estate business or you sold your real estate properties to fully focus on Action Academy.
Yep.
And I wanted to touch on that because I personally had almost 15 businesses before, and I was scattering so many different things at once. It was crazy. Some of them did well, some of them didn't do well, but I understood what the power of focus could be. And people in this world get very sidetracked. The next Instagram ad targets them, whatever happens. Can you talk about that mindset of staying focused and how that's helped you so far?
Well, yeah, because look, like you have to build your business around your life, not your life around your business. And so there's a million ways to make $1,000,000. And if you really like break it down, so there's a bunch of people we talk about the average millionaire has 7 streams of income, right? That's probably true. It's probably true, but it's not, they didn't start with those 7 streams of income.
Right.
And that's what nobody talks about. So it's like an umbrella. So if you look at an umbrella, it's like a long, skinny, it's a long, skinny stick up, and then it branches out. That's how income works. So most of the people that are, 8 figures plus, like the metric I look at is like kind of like that 20 million plus is where I'm like, okay, you're wealthy at 20 million plus. I'm like, you're pretty wealthy at this point. So most of them have like one singular business or one singular strategy that they did. For you guys, it's land flipping right now. And it takes them up to here. And then that point where they have so much disposable cash, then they start investing into other assets and income streams. But they had one path to get there. And people are like too busy focusing on all these different like get rich quick schemes. Like, here's the reality of the situation. Each one of us has about 3 to 5 opportunities in our life. If we're lucky, you kind of one hand how many opportunities that you have at the plate where you get a strike like right down the middle. You get a ball right down the middle. Like, that's only a couple of times in our life that you're going to get that opportunity. And when you get it, like knowing when to recognize it and swing is what will change your life and your family forever. So people are so focused on like the onesie twosies, like so in the weeds. They're so far in the forest they can't see over the trees. So it's like when it comes to this community, I was like, why am I taking these calls for this real estate? I was like, this is $4,000 a month. Like, I'm making $100,000 a month over here. It's like, this isn't even worth my time, energy, or effort. So then I was like, okay, well then, then it takes you to the next real estate logical path of thinking where you're like, okay, cool. I'll take a home equity line of credit. I'll do a cash out refinance. I'll do an LLC. I'll do a business LLC, and I'll use it, or I'll do a 1031 exchange. I'll move into the next property. I was like, that's more stuff that I think about. That's more on my head.
Right.
And I was like, so, and then a mentor of mine just like, sell it. I was like, dude, but you don't sell real estate. It's like, we buy and hold, baby. Like, what are you talking about? And those are low interest rates too. So those are like 3%, 2.5% was one of them. And I was just like, dude, why would I sell this interest rate? And he goes, I think you have one of those opportunities in front of you right now. And I know that's how you guys feel about land. He's like, I think you have this opportunity in front of you with what you're building. He's like, I don't think that, these handful of properties are going to keep you up at night 20 years in the future. It's like, you've got all the time in the world to buy real estate. And candidly, if I could grow a multi-million-dollar a year cash machine right now, that's pretty effing beneficial for the market cycle that we're in when it comes to real estate, because real estate's going to go down before it goes back up. And there's a lot of distress and chop in the market. So if anything, give me a couple $1,000,000 of cash, I'll be dangerous in the next 2024, 2025. But I'm not going to be buying co-living properties. I'll probably throw in with you guys, get some land, or I'll do some commercial triple net lease deals. Not retail, industrial.
Let's talk about that, because we touched on it a little bit on this part that you travel. You're a huge traveler. I started following you a few months ago. Ron sent your account, and just seeing like you're just overseas hopping around, and you just said $100,000 a month, like you're operating a high level business.
That's gross.
Gross, yeah. Okay, so land flipping's remote too. You can do land flipping from anywhere. Our audience can resonate with that. For those traveling, can you kind of paint the picture, or for those wanting to travel from their profits from land flipping or real estate or whatever they're doing out there, can you paint the picture of what that's been like so far for you?
Pretty sick. Pretty sick. Super fun. No, it's cool. So what I'd recommend is, and this is going to sound like, I'll go ahead and preface this with like, it's a privileged place to come from, right? Because I can do this now. So I've literally accomplished, like most of the people listening, like I've accomplished your wildest daydream. Like what you want to do at 70 years old and like retire and work your entire life to do, I did at 27. Diversity is the answer. And I can speak on that from a perspective of having done everything I've literally ever wanted to do. It's like, diversity is the answer. So let me expand on this. I traveled full time for 8 months. I went and lived in the Greek islands for a month. And then I went to Barcelona, and then I went to Croatia, then I went to Amsterdam, I went to the Swiss Alps, I went to Austria. I just got done with another 2 months where I just did a road trip around Switzerland. I got my thigh tattooed in Rome, Italy. It's like I've been a lot of places. When you have too much of that in too long of a time frame, you become desensitized to it. So hedonic adaptation really, really happens. It's the same thing as like you think you want a Ferrari until you buy a Ferrari. I don't have a Ferrari, by the way, but my friends do. And they're like, yeah, after a couple of months, it's like you just are used to the Ferrari. Same thing with travel. I think the best answer, for me at least, is a month, maybe 2 months at a time, and then go back home and get to work. And then go back out and do something fun, and then come home and get back to work. So it's going through like interchangeable seasons. That's a better way to do it than instead of just full-time travel for 8 months. I'll never do that again in my life. But it was a cool story, right? So now I just did a month and a half in Europe, and I came back, and now I've been working for a month and a half or 2 months. And now I'm about to go out to Iceland. I think I'll be there for a week or two, maybe like 2 weeks, and then I'll come back. So it's just diversity is the spice of life. So, I think that's the best way. And then plus you miss your friends, you miss your office, you miss everything. So my advice is for everything that you do, for people listening, is try to do something that you can operate, like he said, like Daniel said, like anywhere in the world. Like, how can you operate your business with a Mac and a mic? That's my prerogative. And when I set my first vivid vision in 2020, which is what 2023 would look like, a vivid vision is a detailed written document detailing what your life and business looks like 3 years in the future, as if you were experiencing it in present tense. Cameron Harold wrote the book. He's a good friend of mine now, and he's writing the foreword to my book currently. So I wrote that vision out, and in that vision, I was like, I can make money anywhere with a Mac and a mic. I didn't know what that looked like, I just thought I was going to be like some content creator or something like that. And then technically I was right. But I can tell you 3 years ago, the vision I wrote out, I accomplished it in 1.5 years. And I blew it out the water for what I thought was previously impossible. I made not only possible, but like probable.
That's crazy. Really cool to hear that. And like traveling, I've been away from home for a month at one time. And like that, and at the end of that month, you're like, okay, I'm ready to get back to work.
Good. I'm ready to be back. Yeah,
exactly. Get back to my home base.
I want to have a beer with my friends.
Yeah. Exactly. We both have very, very similar groups in terms of the goal of our groups. Like obviously we do a lot of our things from land investing. Your group is a lot more diverse in terms of business buying, real estate investing, but everyone wants the same goal. Like it is a freedom goal that both of our groups are looking for. Talk about the mindset you see. You can talk about from your perspective in terms of your mindset as well, but that you see from the most successful people, the people that are like, I'm going to get out of my job in the next 6-8 months and do it. What do you see as like a common theme? I think this is going to really resonate with our audience.
As a common theme for success, or as a common theme for just people that actually like quit their job?
The mindset that just making things happen. Like what do you kind of see from those people who like set a goal 12 months ago in your Action Academy group, whatever it is, and then they go make it happen?
Gotcha. So it's not fear of failure that everyone is afraid of. It's a fear of appearance of failure, and it's a fear of uncertainty. So your fears that you're thinking you're afraid of are incorrect. And I know that after thousands and thousands of calls now that I've done. So everyone's like, oh, I've got fear of failure, bro. I can't do this. Like, what if everything goes wrong? Okay. So if you go to the gym, if you're a new gym goer and you try to deadlift, 225, and you try to pick it up and it doesn't work and it falls back down, and you're in an empty gym, like, will that deter you? No. But if you do it and you fail in front of a bunch of people, then you're like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I can't ever do this again. Same thing with goals. So people aren't afraid of failing. People are just afraid of their friends and their family seeing them fail. That's it. So first thing we do is we change our relationship with failure, and we define what winning and failure actually looks like. So people assign winning and losing to an end result. That's the biggest mistake you can make, because you can't necessarily control that. And Kobe Bryant was a great example of this with Mamba mentality. He's like, there's so many things that happen to either yield or not yield an NBA championship. People get hurt, people get injured. There's trades that are made, cap rate issue, salary cap issues. Anything under the sun can go wrong. That's completely out of my control. The only thing I can focus on is, am I in the gym? Am I making my free throws? Am I doing my sprints? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Like, that's within my control. Am I hitting my shots? And so when you change your relationship with failure, winning and failure, to success and failure, to the actions that you take, then it's a controllable game. And now you're not as afraid anymore. So what I tell people is, I'm like, okay, cool. So you want to leave your job. So the first thing that separates the people is crystal clear vision, like I wrote. Because if you don't know what you want, then you don't know what you want. So it's like, you don't know what winning looks like. So if you don't even know what your NBA championship looks like, how are you even going to, put a shot up? It's kind of a pointless pursuit, right? So at the end of the day, it's like once you have winning defined, then we have a goalpost to aim for. So people are so anxious. You're not depressed. Depression comes from a lack of resources. Anxiety comes from an abundance of resources, which that's 99% of us. So like you're just trying to climb this mountain and you see 30 different paths up the mountain and you get so confused about which one to take that you don't take one, right? So it's like the answer to anxiety is just simply clarity. The more clear that you can get, the more you just snap into action really, really fast. And it all comes from clarity. So step one, the people that actually make it and they're successful, they're very clear on what they want. If you're not 100% clear, that means you're 100% unclear. So that means if you're 95% clear, then you're 100% unclear on your mission, on your vision, on your values, etc. So then at that point, then it comes your relationship with failure, like we just talked about. So now that we're clear on what we want, now we break that down into our annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily goals. So the goal is to figure out each and every week, am I advancing towards my overall vision every single week? And that's that level of tracking and that level of detail. So instead of being like, did I lose 50 pounds of weight? It's, did I go to the gym 4 times this week? Did I follow my diet 5 times this week? Did I do 2 hours of cardio this week? Did I check in with my accountability partner, 3 times this week? The actionable stuff. So then if you don't do that stuff, then you're a failure. But if you do that stuff, you won. So it's like at the end of the day, say you lose 45 pounds and not 50 pounds. Is that a loss? Is that a failure? Heck no. That's freaking awesome. So it's just assigning how we view failure and how we view success to the action instead of to the end result. So clarity, direct actions. So we call them lead measures versus lag measures. Lag measure is the result, lead measure is the action. And then lastly, it's accountability. So an environment. So being around the correct people, because you rise to the level of your goal, but you fall to the level of your system, standards, and environment. So take person 1 that's trying to lose weight, person 2 that's trying to lose weight. Person, 1 is around all of their friends that are already unhealthy and they're trying to be the outlier. Person 2 is maybe pretty overweight, but then they go start hanging out with CrossFitters, and that's who they're hanging out with every single day. By default, like you will snap into that new frame. So same thing with you guys. So it's like somebody comes into land investing and they're like, oh, okay, everyone else is doing this. Like, this is easy for me now. And like with me in Action Academy, we do all different asset classes and we have overlap between our communities as well. So then they come into that group and then they're like, holy shit, right? People are murdering it here. And then it completely is a frame break. And then you immediately shift into that. An example of this for me is, we're making $70,000 to $100,000 a month. Like, it's pretty sick. And then I listen to this guy, Cole Gordon, and he's like, oh yeah, I have this community coaching thing. He's like, we're making $400 a month. And then we just made this one tweak to our offer and our sales team. We made one hire and that took us up to $900,000 a month. And then now we're hovering around 1.2 million a month. I was just like, I can do that. I was like, so that's a frame break. It's like, okay, that's possible. Here's how it's possible. He just laid it out. So it's vision, clarity. It's taking massive action on the lead measures and assigning your relationship with failure or success to your actions, not the end result. And then environment and accountability.
It's so cliche kind of, and it's talked about way more now, like be around the right people, hang around with people who are above.
That's the only answer.
But it is so true. Like you hang around with fat people, you're not going to get in shape typically. You hang around with broke people, you're probably not going to make more money. No, that's a really good perspective. You kind of touched on it there, Brian, but you interview a bunch of 9-figure, a bunch of $1 billion people on your podcast. There's not that much difference between us and them. Not talking about us individually, just everyone else and them. But what are those little things? What I see personally is they make stuff happen. Like they make decisions that some people would take a month to make in 5 minutes. What do you kind of see from the difference between everyone else, and then the 10-figure guys?
Yeah, I call it the action muscle. It's how fast do you go from idea to implementation. And I think that's the key indicator of success. So for me, if I get no idea, like I jump out the plane and I build a parachute on the way down, like very quickly. So I was just like, man, I want to go to Iceland. And then my brain started firing off and I scroll on Instagram and now every single story I see is freaking people at Iceland. So I just booked a ticket. Now I'm going to figure out my Iceland trip. Same thing with the Action Academy, like the podcast. So I started it because I was walking with a guy at a mastermind event and he said, hey man, you should start a podcast. And then he convinced me to start one. And then I ordered a microphone. I texted 7 people and I was like, hey, do you want to come be a guest on my podcast? I don't know what it's about yet. And I was on the treadmill and I was like, Action Academy, that's going to be the name. And I just started it. Like people would come up with this like 5-month launch plan for their podcast. I think it's freaking foolish. It's ridiculous. Like just do it. Like no one's going to listen to you anyways for the first 100 episodes. So just like wing it and then figure it out along the way. So they've got a stick-to-itiveness. They're very clear. If you talk to anybody that's 50 million plus, they know their numbers like the back of their hand. They know every number in their business. They know what their churn is. They know what their LTV, their CAC. They know what the cost is to acquire a deal. They know how many calls it takes to generate a deal. They know what the average deal size is. They know their numbers. So they're very clear about where they're at today, and they're very clear about where they're going. They are very good at setting vision and setting intention for people. And then that's another thing is they're very good at leading people. So once you get up to a certain level, it's like the only thing that you're looking for is people. That's it. Because you could be a really good investor up to the 8-figure mark. And then at the 8-figure mark, you have to be a really good investor of people. Like that's it. So it's like you guys just hired, an operations guy to take over like the business, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like making those key strategic hires is like everything. And so look at Keller Williams, like it's all people. So they have a huge focus on people. They've got crystal clear vision. They've got a stick-to-itiveness to where they're very, very stubborn. And they're like, this is my vision. Come hell or high water, I'm going to make this happen. And they are also surrounded with other people that are like them. And they have a very low tolerance for people that aren't like them. And they eject them from their circles. And lastly, I would say, man, they just don't listen to the opinions of the majority. And they're really good at saying no to things. So every yes has to be justified by 300 no's for them. So it's like they're really good at saying no to stuff and no to opportunities. They're very, focused on their one thing.
I think you're spot on with all that. Dan, you have anything to add in terms of those qualities? Like that's what it's just, and your belief in it, like you're around them so much with interviewing them, Brian. So you understand their mind because you get to ask them questions, just like I'm asking you questions. You get to ask them questions, whatever, 20, 30 hours a week, whatever it is for all your podcasts. So you can get into their mind and become that. Really cool story though, Brian. I don't have much to add, Dan. You have any additional questions for him?
No, I think the biggest thing you just hit, Brian, was you start by taking action and then you can adapt along the way. Like it's not going to look how it's planned. It never is. But by starting it, you see just things evolve over time. And I want people to walk away with that because it's so important. Like so many people would just plan on what they're going to do when they come in the land flipping business or their future business. And they're planning it for 6 months and just not taking action because they think, the economy's too bad or whatever it is. It always starts with just step one. There's always going to be excuses. The best time to start is now, in my opinion, almost always.
Yeah, 100%. And then in closing, the big thing that's helped me like level jump is identity. So the reason that people fail is because they don't identify as a winner yet. They don't identify as successful. And so when it comes to identity, the best, like it's very difficult. I get really pissed off at the quote, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. I'm like, okay, dude, I'm who, where? I'm like, okay, do I just ditch my college friends that I've been friends with for 15 years? Like, what does this look like? Right. And so I'm writing about it in my book. I'm like, what is the tactical process to do this? Because everyone's like, you just got to change who you're surrounding yourself with. I'm like, dude, how? I don't know any of these people. So now after 5 years, I do know these people. And the answer is immersion yields conversion. So that's a Brian Luebben original. So when it comes to identity, what the people are like, how do I get to that next level of mindset, that next level of thing? So for somebody that's listening to this in the land flipping space, you know, maybe you're just now starting land flipping and you're like, I can't fathom making $1 million, let alone $100,000. So what you would do is surround yourself with Dan and Ron and then be in their world. They're making $3 million a year doing it. So now you're just watching them and you're seeing what's possible. And you're like, and then you start breaking your frames of what you think is possible. And you're like, okay, I see this is literally happening in front of me. Now you watch their actions. What actions are they taking on a daily basis to yield this? And then you're like, okay, they're sending this many mailers, they're doing this many calls, they're building this type of team, this type of org chart. Got it. Simply by doing the same actions that they are doing, you are taking the actions of a $3 million a year land flipper, right? So it's not rocket science. We just try to make it so secretive and elusive. But if somebody does the same things that you guys are doing, then they're like, okay, cool. Like now you're like, okay, I'm going to be a $3 million land flipper. And so like, that's how I view like this $100 million thing. Like I'll hit $100 million one day by default and I'm not even going to pay attention to it. Like it'll happen because it's like, I'm just around them 24/7. And like every single thing that they tell me, I implement and I make this tweak to my org chart, make this tweak to this. And I'm like, okay, so how are you making your org chart for this at this level? Like that's going to be me in 3 years. They're like, oh, we have this person. This is what the sales team looks like. Here's what management looks like. Here's what the VP looks like. Here's the compensation. Here's the plans. I'm like, okay, I'll just do that. And so I'm like, the path is there. You know, you just have to take action on it. And that's the answer for everything. If you want to be a freaking big bodybuilder, go to Gold's Gym. Don't work out at Planet Fitness. Same concept.
And it's not by accident that I'm sure, I don't know everyone in your community, but I'm sure the most successful people immerse themselves within your community. And that's what we see. 100%. Yeah. It's the people who are in every call. It's the people who are asking questions. They're active in Discord. And then on top of that, they're taking a ton of action. But Brian, right. I really, really appreciate you coming on here. I don't have anything else to add. Can you tell people where they can find you? I know you have a ton of places where people can find you.
Yeah, sure. I would go to w2toworldtravel.com. That's got a bunch of free stuff. I wrote like a 30-page free guide there. You can go there, check out Action Academy podcast. I talk into a microphone every single day. So you can check me out there. And then I will be releasing a book in December. So I haven't released the title yet, but it's going to be literally on everything we talked about today. It's going to be the tactical, emotional, philosophical, and mental tactics for you to go from employee to entrepreneur. We talk about business, buying, real estate, all this different stuff and all the mental and psychological stuff that you need to fix in order to fully transition into doing your own thing. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening. Brian, really appreciate you coming on here today. It was really good. Good mindset shift, I think, for everyone. Surround yourself with amazing people, and you'll become amazing yourself, is what Brian's saying, basically. Other than that, guys, please like and subscribe this video, this YouTube channel, and have a good day. We'll see you guys next time.
As always, thank you for joining. Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this with a friend. It really means the world to Ron and I, but more importantly, it could help change the life of someone else. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next episode.